was growing up, the world around me did a really good job of making me feel like that I couldn't do anything exceptional with my life. I've always been really rough around the edges. My family seemed perfect, and I was, an oddball or black sheep, to say the least. I got out of school at 18. I tried the college route, and I dropped out my first semester because I knew it wasn't me, and I took off on my bike. And my mom, she thought she'd get a phone call of me winding up in prison or dead. At the end of 2003, I was working in the restaurant industry. I was a bartender. I learned about the world's water crisis. I remember being like, all right, I may just be a bartender, rough around the edges, biker kind of guy, but I think I can do something about this. 6 months after my very first event, I'm on a plane to Darfur, and there's nothing that could prepare you. No amount of studying or research or articles or pictures could prepare you for a place like Darfur. After about a month of being on the ground, I'd say I was able to actually focus in on water work and begin to research and learn how in the world do I now get people clean water. And the first place I chose was an area in a UN no-go zone, which there was a couple of those in Darfur that were areas held by the rebel groups that were fighting against the government. Basically they said, we've had enough of our women and children being killed and raped, so we're going to fight back. And those areas were constant conflict areas, and so they were considered too dangerous for any United Nations personnel to be in. And because of that, they didn't receive any aid at all. And so I chose to go in those areas to do my work. I remember when I first got on the ground, I had this image in my head that I would get there and I'd just start working immediately, and I'd be saving little kids and drilling wells all over the place and saving lives, and I'd be some, water superhero. And it didn't work out like that, for sure. The most important thing I've learned throughout this whole process of this journey: you can be an everyday, average individual, and you can have a huge, extraordinary impact on the world around you. When you have these dreams, these ideas, these passions, all the things that make you afraid, that make you want to put on the brakes and say, whoa, 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 whoa. If we were to do the opposite and step on the gas and go, I think we'd surprise ourselves with what we'd be able to pull through.
Las empresas mineras nos hacen creer que ellos están cumpliendo las leyes. Ellos dicen que tienen permiso del offshore. Es todo falso. Ellos ponen amenazas bajo convuelos de helicópteros, con cercas en nuestros territorios y militarización que tratan de atemorizar, a desorganizar a nuestras comunidades en nuestro territorio. Tenemos un solo representante, que es el pueblo Shuar Arutam. Durante los 18 años en nuestras asambleas de pueblo Shuar Arutam está resuelto no a las empresas mineras, a gran extractivista en nuestros territorios. Como otros pueblos de lucha, no nos retiraremos ni un paso atrás de nuestro territorio. Al defender la selva amazónica, también defendemos la vida de todos. Soy Josefina Tunqui, actual presidenta del pueblo Shuar Arutam. Pedimos tu apoyo y defender juntos la vida de la Amazonía ecuatoriana.
Welcome to New Hampshire's Business. I'm Fred Coker. How will New Hampshire benefit from the climate and clear energy provisions in the legislation from Congress? Now, connected to this is this action in the recent New Hampshire legislature with House Bill 172. The New Hampshire House Science, Technology, and Energy Committee voted not to recommend this bill to limit greenhouse gas emissions and establish a clean climate action plan. To tell us more about this in terms of New Hampshire, how we could benefit, is Sam Evans-Brown, Executive Director of Clean Energy New Hampshire, who previously served as lead reporter on energy environment for New Hampshire Public Radio, where he won several awards for that reporting. Welcome, Sam.
Thank you, Fred.
Sam, you've reported on the New Hampshire climate and energy issues for some time. How do you see New Hampshire benefiting?
Well, really, what it does is it creates a consumer pull, right? So there's all sorts of technologies that already pay for themselves, but the problem has been many of them are slightly more expensive upfront. So though they may pay for themselves over the life of the investment, a lot of consumers struggle to adopt them because they just see that initial price tag. All of these types of technologies now have tax credits, many of which can be turned into rebates to buy down that upfront cost. And so consumers will suddenly be doing these cost comparisons and see that it's actually just as inexpensive upfront to go with clean energy technologies. So things like heat pumps, heat pump hot water heaters, there's rebates even to upgrade your electric service in your house so that you can electrify your heating and cooling demand if you've got old service. And those numbers have been tabulated by various shops. It shows that there's 14 grand on the table for every homeowner who wants to reduce emissions in their home. And the research shops that have looked at this estimate that it'll save the average consumer who takes that step to reduce their emissions, save them between $700 and $1,300 a year on their energy costs.
Sam Evans-Brown of Clean Energy New Hampshire, thanks a lot.
We all know that we are in the midst of rapid change, and that this change can only be navigated if we understand our destination and if we are willing to make course corrections along the way as we go. We are charged with effecting radical change. As stewards of this transition to a more sustainable model in the face of extreme economic debt and ecological debt, we must embed these changes into our systems, structures, into the very cultures of our organizations, and the time is short. We need financial creativity and innovation redirected. The capital markets lost track of some of the most fundamental principles of investment and ownership that, if properly understood and practiced, can guide our whole economy to sanity and sustainability. These principles, fortunately, lie at the heart of responsible investment. The notion that equities are fundamentally a long-term asset class, through which the interests of shareholders should align over time not only with those of the corporation but also of society, and the understanding that institutions with substantial equity holdings share a permanent structural interest in the long-term health of our ecosystems and the economy. Most of all, good share owners need to maintain solid reference points. We might even call them values, about what a thriving, healthy planet, and a thriving, healthy economy, and genuine prosperity looks like. They must be able to see a company's business plan or an industry's evolution in the wider context of economic, environmental, and financial sustainability. I have always been inspired by the words of Martin Luther King, who said, "In the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends." What gives me hope today is that when it comes to the most pressing problems of humanity, we as a community have never been silent. Today, more than ever, the world needs to hear from us, and looking around this room, I have confidence that it will. Thank you very much.
When it comes to reproductive justice, if you start with the pregnancy, you're starting at the wrong place. You have to start with what's going on in the person's life before they're pregnant. My name is Loretta Ross, and I'm a reproductive justice and human rights activist. I was one of 12 Black women who helped create the term reproductive justice when we spliced together reproductive rights and social justice, because there were social justice issues prevalent in a pregnant person's life long before they even knew they were pregnant. Because if they had housing insecurity or fear of losing their jobs or fear of violence in their lives, that would determine whether they would keep an unplanned pregnancy or not. Now, in short, reproductive justice has three basic principles. Every human being has the right to not have a child and use birth control or abortion or abstinence if that works for them. And we have to fight for the right to have the children that we want to have, and that's the second tenet. And it spawned a whole movement called birth justice, which is to control the conditions under which we have children. And then the third tenet is once the baby is born, we fight for the right to raise our children in safe and healthy environments. Now, 10 years after 1994, the LGBT movement added a fourth principle about bodily autonomy, gender identity, and sexual pleasure. I'm not surprised that reproductive justice emerged out of Black women's reproductive experiences, because when we were kidnapped from Africa and brought here to breed as a wealth-building strategy for capitalism, then our children were prized. But that same womb product became problematized and criminalized after slavery. I'm really invested in people seeing their entire world through the human rights framework, because it doesn't matter what economic or social system you live under, because if it protects your human rights, that's the system you need to work to build. If it violates your human rights, that's the system you work to deconstruct.